my watch or my phone or whatever I want to call this thing that keeps time for me. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. If we'd all stand and turn to the flag, we'll call out the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Stephanie, would you call roll?
Member Horning,
Yes, here.
Member Gershenlauer has resigned for the record. Member Bryan,
Here.
Member Lamug will have an excused absence. Member Jones,
Here.
Member Estill will have an unexcused absence. And Member Day,
Here.
and you'll be a voting member this evening. And we have a quorum.
You forgot our chair and vice chair, but yeah,
Sorry.
just for the record,
Just for the record, Member Vice Chair Stark
Here.
and Chair Clark.
present. All right. So that takes care of that. We have the minutes from the February 8th workshop and the February 8th meeting. So if I'm assuming everyone's had a chance to review the draft minutes for both of those, and I would entertain individual motions on each.
I will
motion.
move to approve the minutes for February, the minutes for, let me see, I've got the wrong. For the January 11th work session.
February 8th.
February 8th is what's in our packet, so if you've got something older than that, you've got a double packet.
No, I do. No, I'm reading down the page. February 8th, 2022 minutes for the
All right.
Historic Preservation Board.
I have a motion to approve the minutes for the work session on February 8th. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Minutes have been accepted. I need to entertain a motion in regards to the meeting minutes from last month for our actual board meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from last month's board meeting.
I have a motion to approve by Member Bryant. Do I have a second?
Second.
Again, are there any corrections or adjustments that need to be made? All right, and hearing nothing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. All right, the minutes for the February 8th meeting are accepted. And that will take us into our first item of new business. Christine?
It's actually under old business.
Well, technically, it's listed as new business, so it's old business.
Okay.
We'll make the adjustment to the agenda.
Okay, so this one is for 1135 New York Avenue, and I'm just gonna read through the staff report here. Can you guys hear me okay? Sounded a little quieter. Okay, so the request is for approval from HPB to amend a previously issued certificate of appropriateness, and that was to modify and convert an existing single-family residential structure into a commercial retail location. And the previous approval allowed for modification to the roof design and material, which was referred to as Phase 1 of the project. The applicant was required at that time to return to the Historic Preservation Board for Phase 2. The staff report and approval letter for that previously issued C of A is included in your attachment 1. So that way you can see that. The scope of work right now, I've actually received 2 different proposals that I was struggling with how to put this together so it wouldn't be confusing for you all and you wouldn't have conflicting information in your packet. So what we're actually looking at, this is going to be a scenario 1 and a scenario 2. So if you just keep that in mind as I move forward through this. Phase 1 for this project was removal, this phase one of this project, yes, was for removal of the existing roof. It was replacement with a new roof and creation of an outdoor covered space. That was your phase one of the project. The phase two of the project is installation of windows on the west facade, roof support posts mounted to the exterior of the existing building, and a handicap ramp. So you're looking at that as phase two. So let me just scroll through this all for your benefit. Okay, and just as a reminder, this is the building. I do have additional photos in the presentation, in your packet there. You'll see the figure 6 has a bird's eye view of the existing roof at this time. Okay, so the structure is located within the central business district and has been categorized as potentially contributing on the historic district map. We still had some questions with the state office on this one. Regardless whether it's conforming, contributing or non-contributing, it is subject to the Historic Preservation Board review. It's a 1,122 square foot structure built in, as far as records show, 1915. I do believe it's probably a little bit earlier. The existing roof on this building is a cross-gabled roof, and it has shed extensions over the west and north elevations. That's in your figure 6 there. So figure 7 in your packet is reflecting what they were previously approved for under phase 1, which was the replacement of the existing roof structure and addition of an outdoor space to be covered by a new roof. The outdoor space is sized at 40 feet by 22 feet 8 inches. It does not contain walls, and it's to be supported by 6 by 6 posts. The addition of the new roof and outdoor space will be integrated into the existing structure, and the issuance of that prior C of A acknowledged that the form and integrity of the original design would be impacted in such a way that reversal would be difficult. In other words, removing this roof and allowing for that front gable roof is a difficult reversal to undertake. Phase 2 request includes the installation of windows on the west facade, roof support posts mounted to the exterior of the building, and a handicap ramp. The applicant is proposing 2 scenarios, and this is where I divided it since I got conflicting information in the package. There's scenario A, which I will call out to you as attachment B. That scenario has the installation of vertical 4-inch by 4-inch wood posts wrapped in siding to match the existing wall material. They're to be mounted on the exterior of the building. And the purpose of the post is to support the new roof. The applicant is proposing exterior support post as this is a cost savings for them, as opposed to installing the support posts on the interior where they will not be visible. Second part of this scenario A is installation of a window on the west elevation. The proposed window design, material, and manufacturer have not yet been proposed. The applicant is aware that when this information is submitted, that it may require further review by the HPB. This one also calls for installation of a handicap ramp on the south elevation, the landing of which will wrap around the west elevation leading to the entry door. So this one here that I'm showing you on the slide is the first approval. This one here is what is being submitted now as scenario A. So you'll see the south side has the handicap ramp that wraps around to the west elevation, which is the front entry door. And it shows the posts supporting the new roof. Scenario B, which is shown as attachment C in your application, has the installation of vertical 4-inch by 4-inch wood posts wrapped in siding to match the existing wall material on the installed on the exterior of the building. Again, the purpose of the posts is to support the new roof. There's also proposed an installation of 2 window groupings on the west elevation. Each grouping will contain double or single hung windows divided by a mullion. The material manufacturer have not yet been proposed. The applicant is aware that when this information is provided, they'd have to potentially return back. This also calls for the installation of a shingled gable on hip roof. So the roof design has been slightly changed, and installation of round columns to support the west end of the roof. So let me just scroll back to scenario A here. Actually, I'm sorry, this one's scenario A. So one thing on this graphic that I just want to point out is on scenario A here, that one window on the west elevation differs as well from what was previously approved. What was previously approved was this design that had the windows in alignment with the other windows on this structure, as well as kind of matching the other buildings throughout the district. So that was the window placement and general dimensions before, and this is what's being proposed now, which is a smaller window on that wall space. That as well differs from the scenario 2, which shows for 2 windows that are placed lower. These are now not at the same window height as the rest of the windows on the building. So that's a change there as well. I'll let you digest that a little bit.
I guess just from a standpoint, not even from a historic preservation standpoint, but from a standpoint of the requirements to meet the architectural standards, I'm not certain that just one window on that front facade is going to meet the architectural standards and would not get approved through
So-
the site development plan process.
I do have the criteria in the ordinance that I'll call out to you all. So staff's comments in the staff report are the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, standards 1 and 2 apply to the work. Standard 1 refers to the fact that a property shall be used for its historic purpose or placed in a new use that requires minimal change to its defining characteristics of the building and its site environment. So staff's comments is the building's context has changed. While previously operating as a residential building, it is now in the commercial business district zoning. For this reason, the building's use is changing from residential to commercial. It's not really something that the applicant can control, that one, but I did need to call it out because it is in the ordinance. Number 2 is the historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic materials or alterations of features and spaces that characterize a property shall be avoided. Staff's comments on this one is the additional 4-inch by 4-inch wood posts wrapped in siding to match the existing wall material on the exterior of the building will alter the existing and original appearance of the building. The applicant has proposed this external support system as it will be a cost savings as opposed to installing the support posts on the interior where they will not be visible. Also in the ordinance, you've got the section related to new construction and alterations. So there are a couple of items applicable there. That's listed under additional criteria, and additional criteria 3 and 4 of your ordinance apply to this proposal. So the first one is design styles. New buildings should take their design cues from the prevailing architectural styles within the historic district. Traditional or contemporary design standards and elements should relate to the existing styles. Staff's comment is the proposed alterations are modern and do not take their design cues from the prevailing architectural styles within the historic district. The next one is proportion of openings. The openings of any building within a historic district should be visually compatible with the openings in existing contributing buildings within the historic district. The relationship of the width of windows and doors to the height of windows and doors should be visually compatible with the existing contributing buildings within the historic district at street level. Staff's comments here is the proportion of the proposed window on the west elevation of scenario A is not consistent with existing contributor buildings within the historic district. Specifically, the window dimension, styles, and placement on the wall are not visually compatible with the existing contributing buildings within the historic district at street level. So let me just back up to that again. That's this one. The proposed windows on the west elevation of scenario B are not consistent with existing contributing buildings within the historic district. Specifically, the placement of the windows on the wall are not visually compatible with the existing contributing buildings within the historic district at street level. So at this scenario, the grouping and the dimension is consistent, but it's where it's placed on the wall that's not consistent. Do y'all have any questions about any of this so far? I know there's a couple of things going on here. Still following?
Yep.
Okay. So staff is recommending denial for scenario A, 1 and 2, which is installation of vertical 4-inch by 4-inch wood posts wrapped in siding to match the existing wall material. Also for number 2, installation of the window on the west elevation. So those are being recommended for denial. As well as scenario B, items 1 through 4, which is installation of the 4x4 posts, installation of the 2 window groupings on the west elevation due to their placement, installation of the shingled gable on hip roof, and installation of the round columns to support the west end of the roof. The recommendation for denial is based on a finding that the proposed alterations are not consistent with the purpose and intent of ordinance number 2018-57, which is the City of St. Cloud Land Development Code, Article 3, Division 24, Historic Preservation Overlay District. It does not comply with the requirements outlined in the ordinance, as I've outlined in the staff report. Specifically, the proposed alterations are modern, do not take their design cues from the prevailing architectural styles within the historic district. Further, the proposed alterations are not visually compatible with the existing contributing buildings within the historic district at street level. Staff is recommending the HPB approve the request for installation of a handicap ramp on the south elevation, the landing of which will wrap around the west elevation leading to the entry door. The recommendation for approval, again, is based on the ordinance number 2018-57. And specifically, the proposed handicap ramp will not alter features and spaces that characterize the property. And if you all need me to go through any of these images, just let me know.
I'm sure we'll be flipping back and forth
I'll bring
as
you-
conversation goes.
To scenario A here.
All right, Christine's presented it to us. I'll open the floor for the board to bring up comment. Absent anyone else saying anything, from a standpoint, as I mentioned, I'm concerned in regards to whether or not they're going to be able to meet the non-residential architectural standards based on what they've presented for that west elevation. I'm not sure that they're going to have the proper amount of fenestration that's required. And then from a standpoint of exterior columns being added to an existing wall, you're basically putting your structure outside of your sheathing, and you're basically creating a major problem, because anytime you need to do any replacement to any sheathing, you run the risk of damaging your structure. Your structure really should be inside your, if you will, your weatherproof envelope for your building. And then secondly, just from the look of it, it's those 4x4 columns, even if you wrap them in lap siding, and that just, it's architecturally just, it won't look correct for the style of what a lap-sided building would be. That's just not architecturally done.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes. I don't know whether it's of you or the people who were involved with this, but being that the roof, they want to put a new roof on it and so forth, has anybody been up to the attic and or up there somewhere up high, and found out whether there are any markings on the beams that are up there? I'm interested into whether that was a kit home to begin with. And if it was a kit home, it certainly is historic, but the beams would have had numbers on them and so forth, so the homeowner would know how to put the kit together to build the house.
There's relatively no attic space. I mean, the front half of the building is about 3 inches taller than I am. I mean, I'm not a very tall gentleman. And then towards the rear, they had raised the ceiling, the previous owner did. So at this point, that's maxed out, and it's just, that's under 9 feet.
Okay.
So there's no attic space. We cut
Okay.
open, and the roof is right there.
Okay. Thank you.
The part that we cut open, there weren't any numbers on any of the beams that were, it was connected, not that we saw.
It's a pretty low-pitched roof, so they don't have a lot of space there to work with.
I guess when I was. It's getting through and looking at all these here, yeah. So the attachment B, which was on page 7, Christine, that was the original proposed elevation and extension for the outdoor covered space, correct? With the 6x6 posts and those spacings.
Let me just make sure that we're looking at the same thing here. Yes, let me
Okay.
go back to it here.
All right.
Wrong remote. This was the original one now. I have it pulled
Yep.
up in front of you.
And-
That's what you see in your attachment B.
Okay. And then the other proposed architectural stand, which actually doesn't have a page number on it, but that one also continues to show multiple columns. And the 3D imagery that was shown with a single column obviously doesn't match either of those plans. So I understand that sometimes when you're creating these, that you're not always matching exactly. But I don't know what that distance is, but it'd be very unlikely that would be able to get away with those few of columns, even if architecturally, if it fit in.
Yeah, as far as the posts holding up that west end, it would be the original proposal.
The 6x6 wood posts, okay. You're welcome to step up to the
Yeah,
mic and
we're not
identify
gonna be
yourself
able to pick-
and elaborate if you'd like. Just provide your name and information for the record.
Okay. My name is David Camacho, and I'm one of the owners of the property at 1135 New York Avenue. These are the three gentlemen with me are also my business partners and other owners as well. So the four of us own the property there.
Okay,
So this isn't the first time we've come up here. Obviously, we had an approval done in October. And so I just wanted to reintroduce ourselves just quickly because I know this won't be the last time we come up and say hello. So I'm David Camacho. I'm a 33-year resident of Osceola County. And I'm a nurse anesthetist at the VA Medical Center in Lake Nona. I'm very passionate about this project. We're really excited to be in the downtown historic St. Cloud area. And I know my business partners are as well. Did you guys want to come say hi? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello, my name is Julio Camacho. Been here since 1990, and I am in real estate and insurance business.
okay.
I'm Manny Casada. Been here since '96 or so. We, came as children, but I'm an insurance agent in the area. Also very passionate St. Cloud resident. So.
And my name is Gabriel Casada. Been here since '96 as well. Once again, passionate about the project as well. So.
Great, thank you. So David, you said you wanted to expand on the posts or columns?
Yes. So I think it's kind of it's important to just get a little bit, I wanted to elaborate more on the actual background of the building, if that's okay. The property was already used commercially as a real estate office from the previous owner. And we acquired it as a as a commercial building. To no fault of our own, it was already modified, stripped. Additions were made to this building before we ever saw the building or purchased the building.
Understood.
So more specifically on the west end that you're seeing there, the west-facing elevation was a sunroom was added on many years ago, and the entrance to that west-facing elevation is about 6 feet. So anybody who's 6 feet or above would essentially have to duck their heads to enter the building, which renders it almost incapable of being commercially used. It's very inconvenient.
Understood.
So knowing that, there's no way for us to change that roof line. This building is dilapidated by many standards. It's very old. It hasn't been renovated or no good materials have been used to keep up with this building. So we're doing the best that we can with what we have to work with. So just to elaborate more on these posts, if you will, we have a goal in mind. If you want to look at the rendering, sorry, I believe it is rendering, this is scenario B, okay, I believe. Sorry, thank you. Thank you. So this is the architectural rendering, the non-colored.
Yes.
Perfect, yes, this is on. And I completely understand the windows on the west-facing elevation. Mr. Clark, you were saying that would not meet the standard. And we apologize, our architect did not include the original windows that we got permission for on the October approval for the roof line. This is more, what we're asking you guys for today is the certificate of appropriateness for the posts to be on the outside, to elevate and hold the new structured roof. None of the windows and the door are of strict importance for this meeting on our end. I try to communicate that with Christine, but I know she had to be very thorough in what she was doing here today, so she had to include it. But I want it to be very straightforward and just let you know that what we're asking for today is for the posts to be allowed to be wrapped in existing siding that's already on the outside of the building and then repainted. The windows, we have, in good faith, worked with Christine over the past few months to allow her recommendations for double hung windows, and we will continue to work with Christine. She has been a great asset for us to know and learn more about the historic preservation of the building and the area. But the windows and doors, we are very amendable to. There's nothing concrete that we're asking for today about windows and doors. It is strictly on the beams that will hold up the new roof, because the existing walls on this building will not support a new roof. So these beams have to be installed. And we are asking these beams to be installed on the outside. Yes, partially, part of it is financial savings. The other part of it is, quite frankly, we don't know what other modifications would need to be made to put these posts on the interior of this building. As I've mentioned before, the materials and everything that's already inside of this building is very dated, and it, quite frankly, just doesn't look good as it stands currently.
Well, just from a standpoint of, like I said, putting columns to the outside of your building, which you're saying you have siding, so that siding is over the historic envelope of the building as well. So
Correct.
you basically have 2 layers of exterior sheathing, and if you put your structural element outside of that, you cannot get back in to do any work on your sheathing is the problem. And that's just one aspect of it. The other problem is just the fact that, like I said, it completely blows away the architectural characteristics, so it doesn't meet the standard for that. Your architect should be able to understand or hire a structural engineer to understand how you would install your post interior to the structure in which to handle your loads for your roof. We had the St. Cloud Hotel come to us because they had to redo their roof. They had to bring up and elevate the roof in order to add structural elements to hold everything together. It's similar what you're dealing with, except they have 3 floors when you're only dealing with 1, but it's still an element that you need to understand. Structurally, it can be done. You just need to have your architect or have your architect's structural engineer figure out how to do it without putting the structural element outside the envelope of the building, because that just doesn't work for the architecture of that style. Actually, there's not a style that I know of that has any structure outside of the, if you will, the weatherproof envelope to the building itself.
I completely agree with that. Unfortunately, we are working residents of St. Cloud. We don't have an unlimited fund to rehab this building. So You know, that, you know, we're talking about potentially doubling or even tripling the project cost, and at that point, we would no longer be able to rehab this building.
Understood.
And it would just sit as an eyesore at the very main entrance of historic downtown St. Cloud. So we are trying to find a solution here that doesn't take us out of this. You know, we're St. Cloud residents. We want to keep this owned by St. Cloud residents, and it's important to us. So this is why we're here asking for it. And again, what little is left of exposed historic significance of that building has already been covered, modified already. This is not our doing. We didn't choose this.
Understood.
This is just what we were
And
given.
we also have guidelines that we have to follow in keeping with that too. If we just allowed you to do a modification that doesn't meet the guidelines that we're supposed to uphold, then we set precedents that basically invalidates everything that we're doing here. So I understand, you know, the cost aspect of what you're dealing with, but I also, I mean, to be honest, from a long-term standpoint, I think you create a bigger problem for yourself by going this route to save your capital cost up front than maybe doing it, you know, if you will, what I would say would be the correct way as far as structurally, you know, putting your structural elements inside the building itself. I'm not a structural engineer, so I can't tell you specifically as far as, you know, what the benefit detriment is, but it's an atypical solution.
Yeah, so I mean, if I can see the exterior design. So if everybody can just take a look at the exterior design. This model here scenario was created by my brother, who is a realtor by trade. He's not a design artist, so it wasn't meant to get your approval. We just want you guys to get an idea of what these posts wrapped in existing siding would look like. They're barely going to be visible to the naked eye, and if we didn't tell you about them, they would hardly be discerned. I mean, they're going to hang out maybe 3 inches from the side of the existing wall. This is, you know, what we're kind of trying to do is almost trivial to what the building looks like right now. We're trying to bring a better looking structure to the downtown St. Cloud historic area. And I understand that the ordinances don't necessarily agree with it, but I guess that's why we're here asking you guys.
Does anyone else have any other questions or comments?
Well, I do. David, just for clarification, can you explain to me the difference in the version that we approved in October versus what you're asking for today?
Oh, yes, ma'am. The version that was approved in October did not have the posts on the outside of the current structure. So the covered patio area had the posts, but on the...
But these that are showing here, they weren't considered posts?
Yes, ma'am. On the existing walls, there were not going to be posts showing. So what happened now was the posts needed to be put on the exterior for a significant cost savings, and then wrapped in the siding that's already there. So they would hang out maybe 3 inches from the existing wall, the post, which I believe is like 4 on the south-facing elevation. 4 or 5 posts, yeah. On this specifically on this south-facing. So the columns that are there on the patio side were already there, but now we would have to wrap the columns on the south elevation that you're seeing there.
Which is why, when you look at it visually, it looks like you have indentations and...
Yes, correct. There would be about a 3-inch pop out from the
It'd be
existing wall.
if it's a 4x4 post, you're going to have the post outside than your lap siding, so you're actually going to be about closer to 5 to 5.5 inches,
We would
depending
cut
on the
into
thickness of your.
it would cut into the existing siding to put the posts and then wrap it, so it would be minimal.
Is that the historic
less.
siding, or is that the current non-historic
That's
siding?
not historic siding, that's added.
So that you've got over 1.5 inches of depth, then you're saying?
Yeah, at
Because
least
we
an
don't want to
inch.
damage the underlying.
No, that's
material.
all been added exteriorly, and we talked with Christine, that was not of historic importance. siding. Anyway. Sorry, yeah.
I need to provide some clarification on a couple of things, just to be very clear. So the existing original siding is there. It's below the non-conforming siding that was added before you all became a historic district, so that's not something they added. That was something that was there, but the original siding does exist beneath it. So if this was a scenario where it hadn't been covered over, if they were doing siding repairs, it would be that original repair that they would do with the original materials. This new siding was added quite some time ago, but the
more modern
non-conforming
siding.
siding, the non-original siding, at hand here would be approving more non-conforming siding. That would be one issue. And how that might impact the wall behind it, which is an original wall, which is really on this building, all that kind of is left. But the other things that I wanted to provide as a point of clarification is I struggled with this agenda item because honestly, with getting this conflicting where you got to look at one drawing here and then another drawing here to piecemeal what you're looking at. Usually we reject applications like that and have them come back at a future meeting, but I have been working with these guys for months and I know that time is of the essence on this project. So if you'd be a little bit patient with the different scenarios, and that's why I broke it up like that, because I am trying to help them to keep moving forward on the project. But one thing that David said that was incorrect was he said that the approval one, that these windows were approved. You all didn't look at that. That your first approval, your phase one, was strictly the roof and the addition of that outdoor dining area. So there were no approvals, and that approval letter is in your packet. That is the only thing that was looked at. So always was required to come back for the doors and windows and all of that. But I do have to point out whenever you all get any kind of drawings or renderings, if there's conflicts, that's something that I do have to point out to you at a minimum, but usually we don't even let it go to the board. So does that make sense with all of that?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, the windows and doors is not what we're asking for. We've already told Christine we will do the windows and doors that you ask of us, which is, you know, what double hung antique style doors that are not what's on the building currently. So.
So, yeah, and I was the one that created the visual parts of it. So I didn't go to school for that, so I apologize. So that's why when she was like the window height, I was like, oh yeah. So I apologize about that, but I just really wanted to give the visual when we were talking about the posts on the outside. The posts on the west wing, I couldn't find in the program that I was using the wood ones, so that was the only columns that they had available so that I can use in this program, and it's not obviously an architectural program because I just don't have those available to me. But I was more concerned about creating the posts on the outside, like we spoke about, and kind of getting everything somewhat in double, pane, or double hung, like we intend to do. So, just we understand the ordinances. We don't want to go against anything, but we are very passionate about it, and like David said, it's very, very, very cost effective to have it this way. And if there's anything we can do, if not, then, besides, we're open to suggestions or recommendations from the board.
Member Bryant, go ahead.
I think in regards to not taking away the cost-saving portion at all, or the ordinances, as far as a board, we have the guidelines that we have to follow that are to preserve the historic preservation of this district. And one of you did make a point as well that that's like when you go into St. Cloud downtown, that's one of the first buildings that you see. So I think that's why we're questioning or inquiring quite a bit about those particular posts. It's not so much as far as cost savings or not cost savings. We, of course, don't want anybody to have to do things that are going to cost them more money. It's just the ordinances that we have to follow as far as the design standards.
David, do you have any idea what your cost differential is between those two plans?
Yes, ma'am. We were told 2.5 to 3 times more expensive, which I believe our original cost was $85,000 to $100,000 to do it with the post on the exterior. So we're talking about 160 to, well, call it maybe $350,000 versus an $85,000 project to put the posts on the interior. That was just a rough estimate given by our general contractor.
I guess to me, I just don't understand why you would have an additional cost. Your post, if a 4x4 post on the exterior can function, bringing it on the inside of your wall, you lose that 4 inches inside as far as for bringing it inside, but it doesn't change. It wouldn't change your cost other than the fact that you're having to access to get your foundation in.
Correct, yeah, it'd be access and way of having, because right now the building just sits on cinder blocks.
Correct. So you have to open the floor in order to get your footer in, to get your posts and have all that set. But what I'm saying from a standpoint of, I don't see how it's a factor of 2 to increase the cost, because you're not changing the height of your post, you're not changing the size of your post, you're not changing the number of posts. The only thing you're changing is the access in which to put the footer in. So I personally think that, maybe your architect needs to explore that a little bit further, because I personally can't support having exterior columns outside that because it does not fit. And I understand cost factors. I understand having other jobs and you're doing this as development, and I appreciate it. My boss does the same thing. And, I understand the cost that he has to go through when he's, developing properties here in St. Cloud. So, it's just, again, I have to hold to what the architectural standard is and understanding of what that expectation is, which is why I could not support having exterior posts.
Christine, do you happen to know what the amount is for the CRA grants, the BSIG grants?
I was told it's $10,000 right now, but I did talk to them about potentially if they come up with a design that is something I think the board could approve, to actually go to the CRA and see if we could work with them and try to get more money, if that's doable. But they wanted to hold on that discussion and see what the board said. But that is a discussion that I started talking to them about and did get some information, and the answer was 10,000.
Now, the other thing that we were discussing as well was the handicap ramp, correct?
Yes.
Staff is recommending to approve that.
The handicap ramp's not physically connected to the building itself. It's a standalone. So, that one's a quick and easy. If you want to make a motion in regards to that and knock it out of the way, then feel free.
Yeah, I would. I'd like to make a motion to approve the handicapped ramp based on the finding that the proposed alteration is consistent with the purpose and intent of ordinance number 2018-57, City of St. Cloud Land Development Code, Article 3, Division 24, Historic Preservation Overlay District, Section 3.24.8, and it complies with the requirements outlined in ordinance number 2018-57, as outlined in our staff report. Specifically, the proposed handicap ramp will not alter features and spaces that characterize the property. So I'd like to make a motion to approve that.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. I would just clarify, I think we had 2 different scenarios of handicap ramp at one point in time, but I think the only one that I saw plans for was the one on the south edge. So from a point of clarification, that's what I'm assuming we're all talking about, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The handicap ramp that runs down the south.
Down the south to come around to the west side on the corner for your front entrance, yes. Understood. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify likewise. All right. The motion for the handicap ramp is approved. That leaves us with one other item still, which is the either scenario A or B.
So Christine, I have a question. In the event that, let's assume we took the post, they're proposing the post on the outside, which is only changing the outside in certain aspects, it's leaving the bump outs and stuff. If they did post for the whole way and extended that whole wall, whatever that depth is, 4 inches or whatever it is, does that meet the standards?
You're completely changing the original building form, basically. So right now, you all know that you've got an original structure there that dates, at least we know, till 1915, and the locations of the wall are what they have been since 1915. So what you're proposing would actually have them put it out, probably pull that siding off. They'd have to pull that siding off to bump out the rest of the wall and then put new siding. So now, at that point, you might as well have done a demolition, because you're not going to have anything really left of any historic fabric on that building.
Just a reminder, I can't make motions, so it's up to the 5 of you.
So with the portion that we're trying to preserve, something that we wouldn't see anyway?
Right.
Well, I mean, by adding the posts to the outside, which actually are pretty much both scenarios, and that you're talking about, again, you're putting a structural element outside the envelope of the building. So,
About wear and tear.
well, it's not even a wear and tear. It's just the fact that it doesn't meet architectural standards for the style, because now you've completely changed the look. It's not a historically architectural style.
Yeah, when you're reviewing any applications for any buildings, that any non-conforming materials that were added perhaps before there was a historic district, that can make the building non-contributing, but as soon as you pull that off, the building could be contributing. So with the case of like a closed porch and aluminum siding or vinyl siding, that's just a cladding. It's like the shirt that you
Yeah.
put on. So that could be changed, but if you change the actual form and integrity of the structure itself, so those elements are still there behind this non-conforming sided that was added in the past. It all still exists. So if you're adding posts to the exterior, then you're wrapping those, or if you're changing a whole wall just to, then what are you doing?
Well,
That's really cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
And the key thing is you can't take that back.
Right.
In order to take the structure back to anything historical, so if you decided you wanted to bring out the original siding of that and utilize that, you can no longer do that, because you would have to tear off the roof. You'd have to take all the posts away in order to do it. So that's why I had mentioned earlier the fact that you could be creating a longer-term cost problem for yourself by doing this than to try and solve it with a little bit more money up front to get the structure inside the building itself.
And just for a reminder, the basis of the original recommendation for approval of changing out the roof was this building has the original roof structure, but over time, there were additions that were added that were not well done. And so what they were dealing with was an original roof and then these weird slanted roofs, like he said, not even clearing 6 feet. So it was really not usable for them. And since they had to replace roofs, that's why they asked it, because before it was a gable and wing roof. So they already got approval for significantly changing the design, but there was a valid reason for that. You couldn't even clear the height. I've been in the building. So, and it's in the central business district, but normally an application like this, as far as it's gone, is not something we would normally even get this far as the design goes, if that makes sense. But they did have some extenuating circumstances.
Understood.
If there was a denial for a certificate of appropriateness, would the old certificate of appropriateness that we've already approved, would they still be able to do that one?
You can put that in your motion, that your original certificate of appropriateness approval is still valid. And if you're going to do that, the original certificate of appropriateness, I would refer to the approval letter, that's there in your packet, because that approval was just for the change of the roof and the addition of that courtyard area. It didn't have anything with, changing elevation of wall heights or anything like that. So say if they wanted to add like another 4 feet, that approval wasn't in there. It was strictly for changing that roof style and adding that outdoor area. So if you want, this is being proposed as amendment to your existing C of A. So if you do a denial, just reiterating that, and the approval letter's in your packet there. Chair Clark, can the applicant?
Yes, please. If you have something else to say, since the board's being quiet, please.
Well, yeah, so it was also worth mentioning that to get the current walls up to a functioning roof size, we would have had to build up the existing walls as well. So,
Where the shed roof enclosures,
correct,
which was not, Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, the shed roofs were not a historic element, correct?
They were added at an early.
So those portions where the shed roofs, where you're extending height in order to meet that, that's understood that would happen. But we're not talking about the remainder of the structure. So if you're talking about now needing to lift the overall height of the main structure, then that would be a problem.
The original approval had it going to a 10-foot height as far as from the roof line. So, I mean, the entire building would be higher.
would be
Like,
essentially
the
have been
ceiling.
raised.
You'd really need to be, at this point in time, you don't have enough documentation to really support giving us the information that we would need to understand what you're doing. Just to say that you're increasing the wall height isn't necessarily, I mean, you don't have any architectural drawings that are showing how you're achieving that. In order to get your permitting just for your roof alone, that would have to be there anyway. So, I mean, there's just not enough information for us to, I can understand as far as the shed roof areas where those walls would have to come up, but I wouldn't understand why you would have to lift the existing building walls in order for your new roof to work.
We actually do have
Yeah,
architectural renderings, and
Yeah,
I believe they were in the
original,
packet.
It was there. I'm trying to find it on
And
the,
it was,
the thing.
that was all previously approved in October.
No, I'm talking about, I mean, if you're talking about the need to structurally lift the wall to raise it up structurally to handle that roof, that's another discussion that we would have, because you would need, I would expect either your architect or your structural engineer to be in here to explain what it is that's being done and why. It's exactly what went through when they had to lift the walls and that for the roof on the hotel. Their structural engineer was in here explaining the elements of why they were asking for those things. I couldn't just look at that and say, well, you're putting a new roof on, so you need to raise the wall height. That doesn't make any sense. Because your wall is already what your structural element of a roof is attached to.
Correct. So I guess the original proposal that was approved, it had a page that specifically showed the existing walls and roof height, and then it showed the
That,
proposed.
I can tell you that wasn't clearly delineated. when
I
that-
promise you, we discussed this in October, and it was approved in October.
I
That's
don't
why.
remember discussing an increase or a modification to the wall. That's, again, that's a change to the architecture. It's a change to the building itself. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to explain the fact that, that you can change out a roof without changing the walls. But the question,
Not
but-
these walls.
Well, now you're
discussed
talking,
it.
again, you're talking structure, and neither of the four of you are an architect or a structural engineer that can explain what it is that the proposal is that's doing. That's all I'm trying to say is, for us to understand what's going on, we're not getting enough information.
I understand. That was discussed in October, however, so that's why we're not discussing it today, because it was already discussed, with all due respect.
Staff report and agenda from October.
What pages of the staff report? Because I've got so many pages
So
to work
it's-
through.
Your October agenda is attachment A.
It's
That's the
application
October 12th staff report and approval letter, and I just looked through that. The proposal does not mention that, it just is a modification to the roof. So it is listed as, the request consists of removal of the existing roof and replacement with a new roof and creation of a covered outdoor space. If you go further in that packet, you will see the approval letter from that meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure which page I was looking at to refer to it. Because
Okay.
I did not recall having a discussion in regards to wall changes.
So if you want to look at attachment A, page 2 of 10, I'm sorry, page 1 of 10 first.
Correct.
So your attachment A, page 1 of 10, the request is detailed there. And then your attachment A, if you get past page 10, you'll see the approval letter. And that says, the conditions of the approval are modification of the roof approved as Phase 1. All work beyond roof modification must return to the Historic Preservation Board for review as Phase 2 of the project. That was October 12th. Stephanie, do you have the signed minutes?
And so,
This one?
Other than I recall us speaking about the front portion of the roof would have to be raised because it wouldn't match.
No, I don't
But I
think
don't
the
recall us
minutes are
saying
in here.
anything or discussing the rest of the roof
But they should
being
be.
raised, just replaced.
correct.
That's my recollection.
Yeah. And it wasn't,
Well,
and to be honest, in the documentation and in the plans, elevations that were provided, it doesn't indicate an existing wall height and a new proposed wall height. So we weren't, and it isn't documented as far as verbiage that we even touched on wall heights, other than the fact that this is what they said it was going to look like, that's how the roof was going to look. I couldn't go back and say yes, that we agreed to any other change other than what's documented, which is the roof itself.
I'm just trying to get the
The new,
actual minutes that you all voted on.
is this the original height that they gave us?
Well, this is the elevation that was provided in the packet. What I'm saying is it has a roof height, or I mean a wall height, but it doesn't indicate
Yeah, but
whether that's
remember, just
original
like with
and
this meeting
a
now,
new
where you
proposed
have
height,
drawings and they're all
which,
over the place, the
if
only
it was a
thing
change, it should have been documented that way.
That was Phase 1. They were not looking at approving anything else. It was just the roof. That was how we got you on the packet, because remember, I was gonna have to bring you to the next meeting, that you talked about the whole ordering of the trusses. It was only the roof they were looking at. And this one, I don't think shows a different one than anything.
This is October. Conditions.
What they were looking at, though, just like with, we talked about that as Phase 1, that's the only thing that we're looking at, and anything else we would have to come back for. But let me just find the meeting minutes, just so we can doubly check. Because they were only looking at actually changing that roof design. So let me just, so the signed minutes that I have here,
Christine, I have a copy as well.
oh, you have the signed minutes. Can you pass that to Chair Clark?
there's nothing specific in the motion in regards to touching on wall height or anything else, so it's
Well, it refers to the staff report
It
as
refer-
outlined in the staff report.
correct. So I mean, but there's nothing in the staff report that was touching on wall height changes either.
I guess it's just an assumption with the elevation, that was all.
Yep. And again, like I pointed out on the elevation, the problem with the elevation is it didn't point out original wall height and new proposed wall height, which if there were a change of expectation, that's what we would expect to see on that. We're not reviewing those documents for accuracy, we're reviewing them for intent, which is the intent of whether or not it's meeting the architectural standards. So,
So essentially what was approved then.
if you could step up to the microphone so that what you're saying is recorded.
So essentially what was approved then would be the new roof at is the existing
Just
roof.
changing
Yeah, okay.
Which enables you to get the greater height at the areas where you have those really low shed roofs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess where it stands right now, I mean, it's about 8 feet or so from where you stand, because the building, it doesn't sit on the floor.
Yeah, it's a raised pier foundation, understood. So and my expectation would have been that the wall height was going to be adequate. You know, you may end up with like a header run or something as far as what you're mounting the roof trusses and that onto, but there was no expectation of an increased wall height overall.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess the interior of the building, it makes no difference.
Well, it makes a difference from your function. Yeah, I understand that. I'm just, again, like we're saying, I mean, from a standpoint of if we approve the post on the outside, as Christina said, why not just demo it or allow for you to do, basically carte blanche to whatever the building walls are going to be, and just have it so that your final exterior sheath is in keeping with the architectural historic standards visually with the district. Again, we don't like to lose historic buildings. We don't like to see the historic fabric to be lost. And that's why we're, why I'm against having exterior posts. By correcting and doing your structural element inside the envelope of the building, we're keeping that historic fabric, even with the roof change, because the roof could be changed back if somebody, really wanted to restore back to a set period of time.
And you did have a justification on the roof change. That was not
Yes.
an issue caused by the applicant.
Correct.
Which was one of the reasons of the recommendation for approval.
Yes, and again, like I said, the roof change itself, that's something that, again, it could be taken back. The roof could be taken off and taken back. That's not doing it. But putting exterior columns outside the envelope of the building is doing that, because now not only in order to take it back, you'd have to remove all of your structural elements outside and your roof in order to take it back to any kind of historic, if you wanted to expose that historic side. I'm not even sure what you have under there, if it's a lap siding or
It's a
what
lap
it is.
siding.
Okay, so. I was going to say, do any members of the board have input they'd like to give at this time? I mean, since it's a request, we've handled the request in regards to the handicap ramp. Can we, do we have to do approve or denial on the other request? I mean, as far as to
You can
handle
actually
that,
choose
or-
to continue this.
If we continue this, would there be information that they could bring back to us? Like, what would be a reason to continue this?
If you want a more thorough understanding of what they're proposing, you would continue it on the basis of they have to provide better drawings and better information, things that are not conflicting, so there's a better understanding of the project. However, if you continue it and they're still coming to the same request about the
Yeah,
posts,
if it's the
then
same request, then it's not moving everybody forward. And the longer we delay them, it's delays cost as well. We understand that. So that's not the goal. But on the other hand, if we table this, give them time to go ahead and get their doors and window information back together, maybe allow them to have communication, with you and staff to, again, as far as the elevations go, to make sure that they're hitting their elevations for their architectural standards, because they still need to meet that element as they process the site development plan. That's an advantage to you all, just in the fact that we're not just outright denying you, giving you a chance to put things together, to get with your architect and structural engineer to see what, may be able to be done.
I think you can ask them if they'd like to have a decision up or down tonight.
I think we know it's down.
Would you guys be able to work with Christine and with your architect to bring us the documentation that, would that be something you guys would be able to do over the next?
I mean, we spoke about that previously before today. We felt like it was at least worth, but she recommended that it would be denied, but, she
Yeah.
said ultimately she doesn't make the decision, so we thought.
Well,
we'd bring it to
correct.
you guys.
And we've overridden her recommendations.
I shared that with them.
Did that last time. Sorry, Christine,
So we said at the very least, it was worth bringing it, and,
We're not trying to set a record for her, ups or downs. We're trying to maintain consistency as far as how we're making this. So I would really appreciate going ahead and tabling this and giving you time to get additional information from a structural standpoint, as well as go ahead and getting your windows and doors and that information in place. Because like I said, they're all things that you're going to have in place anyway as you move forward to get your permitting. So it's just in your benefit as well. And it will help be a little clearer for us. Go ahead, step
Unless your
up, please,
preference is
Julio,
to
right?
have a decision.
Please.
If your preference is to have a decision.
I mean, it's,
and I'm not really sure if the decision changes, because we know where the decision's going, so, we table it and see if we can come up with something for next month that, obviously could be approvable, with your help. That's really the only option.
Right. So my question would be, if it's, let's say, in a couple scenarios, so if we table it, would we still be able to, like Ms. Stark brought up, go to the CR, we would still be able to do those?
talk to the CRA as far
to
as to
CRA
try
to
funding
see
and those
what-
kind of things,
what
yes.
What options are available to us there?
Yep.
Okay, now the other thing that we just brought up, because like we said, we were under the assumption new roof was gonna be raised. So if we wanted to raise the existing walls, would that be something that we would have to get our engineer, like you were saying, and it has to be approved as well?
I mean, if you're going to propose any modification to the structure, we would want
Okay.
an actual professional, either architect or structural
Yeah.
engineer, who's able to express why it has to be done
Okay,
and why specifically that has to happen, so that we can weigh that against what we're asking and what we're having to go up against.
okay,
I couldn't tell you whether people would be
Right.
in favor or not, but, it's just a matter of understanding what all the options are,
yeah.
We
just wanted it, we just wanted it to keep the historic part of what is left, essentially the walls, right?
Yep.
But we wanted to give it a little more, because when we have all of you guys walk in one day, we want it to feel, nice and open, not, tight and congested. So that was
Understood.
part of it. So that was on our end, because we thought it was like, 10 feet, it says it on there, so it's assumed, but I guess it's not. So it's a
Yeah.
learning curve for all of us.
If you had an elevation that showed the original with all the heights spelled
Yeah.
out on the same page as that.
So we could do that.
You
So
can
that's-
see
that's
what
another
that
thing we
change
could do.
is. That gives us the information to understand what's being asked.
Okay. All right, so that's something that we can work on as well. Okay.
So can I make a motion to continue scenario A and scenario B to next time, to give you guys more time for
Yeah.
clarification?
Yeah, you can just make a motion to table.
Oh, I make motion to table.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to table and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes. This is directed at
But
Christine.
no, specific to the motion.
No,
Okay, then we don't have that discussion. Sorry. It's only specific to the motion.
no.
Okay, so we have a motion to table this and continue it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? All right. We've tabled that. You've got obviously the approval for the handicap ramp aspect of it, which then you can continue to move forward and incorporate those elements. And when you come back, please, and that work with Christina, and obviously from a CRA standpoint, I don't even know who's CRA manager now.
I don't know that we have, oh, it's Deirdre.
Okay,
Right.
so
Deidre Shaw, yep.
Deidre Shaw, and that you can talk to Deidre Shaw in regards to potential funding from CRA. So, I just get as much information as you can, and,
And honestly, you need to, when you go to them, you need to impress upon them that this is historic. They have not approved a historic building grant as of yet, so.
so sell it, this could be their first.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate you not breaking our hearts and saying no.
No.
I try not to do that except to my children when they're asking for more money. So,
I never want to break a nurse.
great, I put that on the
That's a
record, they're coming
desire.
after me. They don't watch this, luckily.
Christine.
Member Jones has a question? Yes, ma'am.
No, a request.
Okay.
When this comes back to us, I need to have a stick diagram of what the proposed posts look like versus if they were interior. I understand the footprint of the building would look no different, but the little bumps outside would look different. And that's what I need to see, because I don't have a lot of heartburn with little bumps outside. And so I need to see the difference between them. I'm a visual person.
That was the rendering that the applicant provided as attachment C.
Yeah.
That was intended to try to illustrate that.
Well, I need them
might-
side by side on the same piece of paper
Okay?
so I can
So
compare them.
if that helps you understand, she's basically just saying she needs a little more clear drawing, so you may have to zoom in on certain areas and make sure that things are highlighted properly.
The exterior posts, essentially are an A, so.
Yeah, I have visual issues and I need to see them side by side.
Me too, so I did one like that. I believe it was.
They have that in their packet.
Yeah, it just, you may need to zoom in and get a little bit more focus. It's one thing to have the big picture, but sometimes you need to zoom in and hit the detail element, just so it's a little clearer to read.
Thank you.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you next meeting then, I guess. Okay. That concludes the item 1135 New York Avenue. Next will be new business, which we don't have anything listed under there. Is there any other items of new business that anybody's aware of that needs to be brought up at this time?
No.
All right, absent that, we can open the floor to public comment. Do you have any public comment you like that's not related to what we just discussed? You're our only public. So absent that, we'll close that out, and it goes to individual board comments. Member Day, did you have any comments this evening that you needed to bring forward?
No.
Okay. Member Bryant? I don't have any comments. Member Stark? Member Horning? Any comments?
Not tonight, no.
Member Jones?
Not tonight.
All right. Our next meeting is Tuesday, April 12th. Workshop at 5, the meeting at 6. And we can officially adjourn at 7:17. Thank you, everybody.